All right, we're live. Here we are. Me, me, the big board, and I. We might have another guest in a minute or two, but we'll see. And thought I'd just say hi. So thanks for watching. There's the camera up there. Thanks for watching. If you're tuning in after the live broadcast, thanks for tuning in later on. Let's just have a chat. We're going to have a beer and a cocktail, talk about games, lick our fingers, COVID-free fingers, and kind of go for it from there. So we'll see what happens. Give me just a minute to share out a couple of links, and then I'll be with you guys, and we'll kind of go for it from there. So let me see. Let me get this link going here. And we'll put this bad boy out. And hey, dude, you in?
Can you hear me?
I can hear just fine.
Good.
Good. What's going on?
Oh, not much. Had some drinks earlier. Just drinking water now, though. Sorry to disappoint.
Well, that's okay. That's okay. What'd you have earlier on?
I had a couple of Hemingway daiquiris, which are daiquiris with grapefruit juice, lime juice, and maraschino.
Oh, yeah. What? So, what alcohol are you putting in that, though?
That's rum. A daiquiri.
So
rum.
you are putting rum. Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah.
I thought you when you said the first ingredient, I was like, hang on a second, that's gin, but no, it's not. So I said that doesn't sound good.
Yeah, it's a daiquiri. It's basically a daiquiri, which is rum and lime juice and a sugar of some kind. And
right.
For the sugar, you use maraschino, and you also add grapefruit juice to it. So
right.
It was what Hemingway drank in Cuba.
Well, then it's got to be cool, right?
Yeah.
He was an interesting guy all by himself.
Yeah, it only took two of them, and I got pretty toasty, so that's why I'm drinking water now.
Nice. Well, I'm still working on mine. I've got a 11% dragon's milk.
Oh, geez, yeah, I've had that before.
Yeah, that's kind of nice.
Powerful stouts will that just makes me sleepy.
Yeah, well, I'm supplementing it with my, how old is he now? My 18-year-old wanted to try a old fashioned, so I made him a portion of an old fashioned. My 19-year-old had the balance, and there was a little residual, so I kind of topped it up. So I've got an old fashioned as backup as well, and then we'll kind of go for it from there. But I wasn't in the mood to roll dice or play too much, but I wanted to just kind of shoot the shit. So I hadn't spoken to you in ages.
Yeah. And
since we're now not going to MonsterCon or anything, or SwallCon or whatever the latest name for it is, the top secret advanced after combat con that doesn't happen, I thought I'd catch up with you.
Yeah, sure. No, I've been tonight. Yeah, I didn't play anything tonight. I just was clipping the Croix de Guerre from the latest ASL army, the French.
Yes.
Since I had gotten it out, because everybody was from the guild was saying, hey, check your copy and make sure all your blue counters are all uniform, because there's like 11 counter sheets in this thing, and apparently there's some quality issues with the colors on the counters. So really? I had it all out, and I thought, oh, I might as well just start clipping this. So, but last night I played some musket and pike with Dr. Bruce. So,
how had that go?
Pretty good. We were playing Under the Lily Banners, which is the French, all the French battles, and we were playing Mergentheim, which is like the intro, because neither of us had played. I hadn't played probably in a couple of years, And I don't know the last time Dr. Bruce played, but we were both just refreshing ourselves on the rules. So
Right.
that was and it was one of those games where as I was the French and he was the Bavarians, and it's not really balanced. The Bavarians have way more guys, but the French have one good chance to like bloody their noses before they get their ass handed to them. So, and I did it. Like I was able to just knock the crap out of his entire right wing, and before he turned around and punched me in the face. But it was fun. It's a great system, and I hadn't played it in so long. It was good to get back into it.
I have not played that game probably 6-7 years, and I think I've only played it maybe 3 times, and I liked it, but I didn't have a connection with the period.
Yeah.
So it wasn't moving me like Alexander the Great. That's moving me.
Yeah.
Rome versus the Gauls, that's moving me. Justinian, that stuff's moving me, but I just wasn't, that didn't resonate. That's a pretty cool system.
Yeah, the system's great. The orders are great. I still don't really know how to play it because like if you've got your big cav wings or whatever, and you charge these cav wings at each other, and your guys just get the minute there's contact, they're scattered all to hell. There's cavalry pursuit, so the cavalry pursuit takes them off in all these different directions, and then at the end of it, everybody's formation broken, which means you can't move at all.
Right.
And so you have to sit there. So your commander, if he's still alive, you have to change your orders. You start charge orders,
order change and reform, and then put him into a formation, and then work out how to get back together. Yeah. So that's interesting.
Yeah. So that's what happened with the French. Like, oh yeah, I nailed him, and then but you can't. You have one attack, and then you have to reform, and then you can try again. But if you can't reform, while you're trying to reform, he's maybe got fresh guys plowing into you, and killing all your morale shaken and broken guys off. So you got to know how to do it. I don't think I've really figured it out, but
it's a bit of a gamble, isn't it? Working out how and when to attack, because that you're basically a train wreck afterwards. Yeah. So it's either going to be final and absolute almost, or you've got to have reserves and then follow through with that system.
Yeah.
We were playing. I played BCS today, the Brazen Chariots stuff. We're doing that campaign, and my buddy is probably, he's not experienced, but he knows more of the system than I do, and I've played a little bit. So between the two of us, we're kind of working it out. But I finally, with a little help, started getting the cadence of the moving up and stripping supports, and then moving past those guys, and then stripping support behind the next unit back, and then bringing the infantry up and doing the close assaults on both those units, and then whatever's left, isolating them. So finally getting that sort of the right cadence down for those battles, because it can be, some of those units have 6 steps in them in the battalion combat series or system, or whatever it's called, and you do an attack and you can knock a step or 2 off, and they might retreat, but they might not. So then you've got to go through that whole exercise again. But if you isolate them, the next turn they're going to lose at least 1 or possibly 2 steps. So now you've knocked off 3 or 4 steps for the price of 1 attack. So it was just interesting to kind of, I finally went, oh, hang on a second. If I take all these panzers and do this, let's see what happens.
That's a sweet spot in gaming too. When you get it, like when you start to put it together, that's one of the joys of wargaming. And I've heard such good things about BCS too, and I haven't tried it yet. It's the same as OCS. I have all these games, and like OCS I've tried a little bit, but it's one of those where it's not a system where you can just wing it.
No, as I discovered the other night, no, it's not.
Which is my problem. My problem is mental discipline, and so
right,
like trying to stay focused on something that you have to play for a long time,
Right.
it's tough for me. So,
Well, hang on a second. Hang on. You're pretty good because you had what, two or three American Civil War games going all at the same time in your monster gaming room.
but you can totally wing those.
But you know the system super well,
Yeah,
right?
and that helps too. But but there's not a lot of calculation going on there in
Right.
those games, and when you're talking about supply, so the supply element is taken out of it.
Yep.
And
Yeah,
so you can just focus on your tactical movement and positioning and stuff like that. So, and that stuff I can focus well enough on, because like with any game, if you plan well enough, like, okay, I think I can hold this position here, but I'll stick some of these guys behind as a reserve just in case. You can do that kind of stuff and try and throw something together. Where, as with these big supply intensive games, kind of the same thing with like the Twilight in the East, 1914 type series, also operational. That's World War One.
Mm-hmm.
And that was one I tackled and played and got to understand pretty well. But another one that you have to put a lot of mental effort into.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I can't just throw this whole army group, around a flank or something. Like, it has to be plotted. And so,
right.
So you don't really have to worry about that in the big tactical Civil War games.
So I had a question for you. You've played now the line of battle, and you've played the regimental, and you've played the what's the third? The RS. Oh, that is RSS, right? The regimental series. You've played.
Yeah. Regimental series is line of battle. That was like pre-line of battle.
Right. So with the line of battle rules, though, and then there's one more MMP, Civil Brigade series or something.
Yeah, that's the Brigade series. That's what I played most recently.
Right. And so, how do you feel between those two systems? What are you liking and not liking?
I mean, my heart is always with the regimental games, just because that's how I envision Civil War combat. Mm-hmm. But the Brigade series is great for letting you see sort of the bigger picture of these tactical battles. Mm-hmm. There's more maneuver you can do. There's I don't know, like the scope of it is bigger, but there's less units to deal with too. So it's good if you don't want to have the massive thousands of counters type of engagement.
And that's the Brigade series, right?
Yeah, the Brigade series. And the other good thing about the Brigade series is it simulates battles that you can't fight anywhere else. You're not going to find Perryville games out there. You're not going to find Wilderness until the next line of battle game, which is going to be on the Wilderness.
Right.
But and like I just fought Gaines Mill. That was the one that I finished most recently. That's from the 7 days. You can't fight those battles anywhere else. So it's the only game in town for some of them.
Yeah. And so, okay. So then you've played some of Herman Luttman's series, right? The Long Straight Attacks and some of those.
I've only played the first one, Stonewall Sword.
Stonewall Sword. Okay, the small one. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, which I liked. I do like the chip pull. The GMT Great Battles, the American Civil War. That's a chip pull system, and I like that. I think both the chip pull and then the line of battle and Civil War Brigade series, the orders system, both of them have their strengths and drawbacks, but I like them both.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. I just have never really got super connected to Civil War at the tactical scale. I'm really fascinated by the operational stuff. So the great campaigns in American Civil War is super interesting to me, but I just haven't. I don't know. When I go to pull it out and I think, I want to do a multi-module big one, and I start working on it, I'm like, oh, look at that rabbit over there, and I'm off on something else. It doesn't seem to wrap me up. Although I did play a little scenario from Atlanta Is Ours. I played a small scenario just to kind of get my feet wet again. But I really want to get something going there. You've played a lot of that too, right?
Yeah, I've played
and Opposed as well.
Yeah, I've played a little bit Opposed. I played Grant Takes Command. I did the Wilderness scenario, which is kind of like set up as a great tournament scenario. It's a real meeting engagement. You don't know if guys are going to show up in time. It could be a disaster one way or the other, and so you got to really time everything perfectly. So I think that's why it's very well balanced, but a lot of luck involved. But it's a popular tournament scenario. And then I played Battle Above the Clouds. I did the Siege of Chattanooga with that, and that was a fun because that was very supply focused. So a lot of the great campaigns scenarios are sort of these. You got your Gettysburg campaign or your Antietam campaign, and you've got your armies doing this big battle of maneuver. With the Siege of Chattanooga, there was no giant battle of maneuver. It's a siege. So for the Union, their whole strategy is, can I get enough supplies to my guys in Chattanooga over this awful terrain of southeastern Tennessee, and it was a great puzzle to figure out there. And it was like the cracker line, they called it, where you had this one little tenuous little line to get your supplies into Chattanooga, and the Confederates would keep trying to get around and hit it, and the Union would keep pushing them off the line and keeping the supply open. So
interesting.
Yeah, so that was fun to see that kind of unfold. I don't know how balanced it is. It seems difficult for me as the Confederates. If the Union can keep themselves supplied, if you can't disrupt that supply, there's not a lot you can do because they just keep bringing more guys in, and eventually they're gonna push you out. But,
yeah.
But I hadn't played, of all the times that I played GCAW, because I played Roads to Gettysburg as well, and some Stonewall Jackson's Way too, and those were all just supply was never an issue in those because you're in the Eastern Theater, and everybody's well supplied all the time, and so I hadn't really had to think about it in the Civil War context like that before, and so that was pretty cool.
Interesting. That's pretty cool, dude. You really have a passion for the Civil War, don't you?
Yeah, no, I'm a huge Civil War buff since I was a little kid. So that's where my wargaming interests, and I did that when I was in high school. I had a friend who painted Civil War miniatures, and so we played the Johnny Reb system of Civil War minis, and I forget what scale it was, maybe, I don't know, 15 millimeter or something like that. It was where you could fit about 5 of those little guys on an inch square, and then you'd put 5 of those in a row, and that'd be your regiment of guys. And
right. Now,
so whatever scale that was what we were.
Is that the Chadwick? Is that Chadwick system?
I don't know.
Well, who was the guy? Who's the famous board game designer that did Civil War rules as well? Was that Chadwick?
Now I have to look it up because I know because didn't Chadwick design stuff for because it was GDW that did the Johnny Reb system.
Well, that's what I'm thinking. That probably
and Chadwick did some GDW stuff. I found out he designed this little card game that I have called Red Empire, which is about this playing as the Soviets during the playing as the Politburo.
Oh yeah,
in the Soviet Union. And I was looking at that. It was this little card game that my friends and I played all the time in high school as filler, just when we were killing time.
Yeah.
And I looked at it and realized Frank Chadwick designed this game.
Oh, here we go. So Custer66 says that John Hill did it. Okay. That makes sense. Yeah, and then John Hill was the guy I was actually thinking of, not Chadwick. So thank you. Custer61, he chimed in there. And that's right, BC Games. Now, I think that is, I forget his actual name. I think it's Rob or Roberto or something like that. He's. Can you see, if you click on the upper right there somewhere, there's a button that lets you click for comments. You've got to see some of the comments that pop in. And there's only a couple, but.
Yeah, I just realized that.
Setting up the Second World War, that new Barbarossa game that's got 4 million maps and 8,000 counters or something like that. So,
those are the
Europa clone thing update.
Yep.
The super thin counters, but pretty maps. Yeah. Is what it is.
Actually, I've still got. I was doing videos on all the Zulu games that I've been playing, and so once I wrapped up Gaines Mill, I've still got Soldiers of the Queen set up with the Battle of Omdurman to do, and so that's what I've got on my table at the moment.
Right. Yeah, I noticed you. Because I get notifications for your videos, and when I saw this, Rogue's Drift, I'm like, what? Hang on a second, because it's been ACW for months, like a year or something like that. It's like, what the hell is going on? So I clicked over there, like, damn, he can play something besides the Civil War. Right?
Yeah. And I forget I watched some other videos. I don't know, somebody unboxing Victoria Cross 2, or no, I was watching Rob Oren on his channel playing Victoria Cross 2.
Right.
And it made me realize, wow, I haven't played that in ages. And it was Victoria Cross 2 that got me back into wargaming. Back in whenever it was, 2012, maybe 2011 or 2012. I just picked it up at Gen Con at the Cool Stuff booth. I was like, hey, I haven't played a war game in a while. This looks cool. It's like $20.
Yeah.
So I picked it up and played it, and that just sent me right down the rabbit hole. So,
and is it okay? You like it?
Yeah, it's light. I mean, it's a light treatment. Buckets of dice.
You move the dudes along the tracks, right?
That's Zulus on the Ramparts.
Okay.
Which is VPG. That's a solo game. Victoria Cross is area control and buckets of dice, basically. But you've got your you've got for Rourke's Drift, you've got basically the individual companies of British guys, and then just hordes of Zulus.
Right. I'm doing a Callendale.
Yeah, where's your pipe?
I'm trying to feel like I'm trying to look at you, but looks like I'm looking away. So I'm just not a camera guy. I just rather just do voice, but then everyone would tune out, and who gives a shit anyway. So we'll
you gotta feel like you're part of the chat, man.
Yeah, you're right, exactly. Well, it's kind of weird if I'm looking this way and not looking at your face while I'm trying to talk to you. But well, that's interesting. I had so there's not a lot of stuff. When I was watching you play, I was thinking there's not a lot of games on this era on Boer Wars or anything of that nature. It's so asymmetrical, right? It's so slaughter in a box, right? With machine guns and rifled weapons versus spears and bare feet. So nasty stuff. Not the Boer Wars, sorry. I mean Zulu Wars is what I'm
like the other imperial era dust-ups from the British Empire. Yeah. Although I think Soldiers of the Queen was a pretty good system for replicating that, where it I think it did a good job of replicating the British firepower. But if they can't mass it well enough, and this is what I learned when I played the game, if they can't mass that firepower well enough, they get overwhelmed very quickly. And so it does a good job of either the British, if they're massing firepower properly, can really hand it to the Zulus, and the Zulus could lose pretty quickly if they're not careful. But if they don't do it, if the British don't do it just right, then as their guys get chipped away, they just get weaker and weaker and weaker, and they can't punch back. So I thought it did a pretty good job. It was probably the best that I've seen of a real war game, because Victoria Cross 2 is, again, it's pretty light. It's buckets of dice. Zulus on the Ramparts is your solo, States of Siege engine. So it's none of those feel like, classic hex and counter war games to me.
Right.
And Soldiers of the Queen did a pretty good job of it. So,
have you ever been tempted by Lace Wars?
Yeah, I actually have one of them, just because I got it. It was like a fire sale on some website, and it was Charlie's Year 2, which I think is the Jacobite rebellion, but it's part of that system from Red Sash.
Have you read the rules?
No.
Right. Okay. Just curious.
There's a lot of them. I know Callendale did videos a couple years ago on one of them.
Yeah.
And it looked kind of baffling.
Yeah. Well, I love Callendale, but sometimes it's more confusing to watch his videos than it is.
No, he's not a good source for learning learning a game.
But you get a feel for him. I think that's the cool thing, and it's extemporaneous, which I appreciate.
Yeah, no, I like it too. I mean, all my videos are pretty much done in the Callendale style,
Right.
where I just sit there and talk about shit while I'm pointing at the map. So.
You're like Callendale 2.
Yeah, I can't provide, I can't do scripted stuff. I can't provide, well thought out, coherent analysis. I just turn the camera on and wing it. So
yeah. That's what used to get me into trouble with work, is that we have these practice runs of presentations, so if we're going to do a big pitch to a large company, or the execs at all want you to come in and do your bit, and then you're supposed to say exactly the same thing when you go into the meeting, and you can't, particularly if you have questions and interruptions. So I'm fabulous handling anything on my feet, having a conversation with folks, but if you want me to stick to a script, it doesn't really work out very well. So I always like hey, let's put him on first, so he doesn't, if anything he fucks up too badly, we can cover. Someone else can cover.
So you're saying you're the loose cannon?
Well, that's why I typically try to do most of the stuff by myself, and I avoided all the big sessions with guys that I worked for. But anyway, that's all.
Yeah, my problem given doing presentation stuff like that is I start hearing the sound of my own voice, and it starts to throw me. So that's my problem with trying to do anything that's scripted or
right.
plotted out. Then I just hear myself reading, and
right.
just goes to shit from there.
Yeah. I like to use talking points. So I'll have like big theme ideas. So for games, when I'm trying to do, they're not really reviews, but just the after action report. What's the order battle like? What's the narrative like? What's the gameplay like? What's the CRT like? How do you move? How do you shoot? How do you stay in supply? That type of stuff. And that sort of guides me through my chat, so I still go off down rabbit holes, right? Where I think as those vloggers, we're all infamous for that, right?
Yeah.
Here's a question for you, from Steve Harding.
Did I get into Gallipoli? I did. I had it set up for a while. Even played the intro scenario, and then swore I was gonna play more of it, and then got distracted by some other shiny thing. So I want to get back to it, because it was not it is not easy to learn. Just because it had conceptually stuff that I had never dealt with before, like enemies able to opposing sides occupying the same hex, like the terrain, which doesn't look very intimidating when you look at the map and then realize, all this stuff has all these kind of different ways that it has to be handled. And then you add trenches on top of it, and you add different types of fortifications and stuff on top of it. And then you have phone lines and radio, you have all this extraneous shit going on that I hadn't had to deal with in a game before. And so that was tough to get my head around.
Plus 20 pages of command rules.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because I saw Jeff, and I love Jeff. I saw Jeff playtesting that with people in Seattle at Game On every year for the last 10 years, right? I mean, I've been going to Game On for 9 years or something like that. I missed 1 year, and I think all bar one, he was there playtesting. And if people would roll in and roll out, and they'd all come out going, "Oh man, it sounds really awesome," and it played really cool. So he must have just taken it all up, a level for everybody, and just let them move bits and roll dice. Because I remember Tyler was going on about how awesome it was, and then my buddy bought it, and he goes, "Shit, I didn't realize A, this was a series, B, that had 30 pages of command rules, and when you look at this BS in the back with all these tables." So he started reading the rules. He threw it all back in the box. He gave it to me. He said, "Here, if you can make something of this, I'll play it with you, but I'm out." And
it is.
he's a wargamer, and I went, "Oh I had to look at it and I went, back to you.
I don't even think I made it to the command rules, because the first scenario doesn't really get into them. It's just teaching you, the mechanisms of the game, of the, the moving and the fighting. And so, yeah, the command is a whole other, more charts in that game. That game had more chart weight to it than any game.
Yeah.
Serious cardboard.
Yeah, crazy stuff. We did have, there's one other question here. Of course, Clay is here.
Oh, nice.
My main man.
I'm glad to know. Good thing you're okay, Clay.
Yeah, we're glad you're safe here, buddy. Clay's in Brooklyn, so we're hoping he's probably holed up with like 4 honeys. He's doing fine. And all the toilet paper you can handle.
He got all the supplies he needs and his fortified compound.
And gentlemen, just in case you don't know who Clay is like our well, A, he's our friend, and B, he's a great wargamer. But C, he is a magnet for the ladies. So we're pleased and proud to know him, right? We try and let all that charm that he has rub off on us. It doesn't seem to work very well. Oh, there was another cool question up here somewhere. Someone said, "Do either of us play air or naval games?" What about you, Val?
I have not. I have a bunch of them, of course.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Well, so what I need to do is play Fleet, like the Fleet series, right? That's the Guild.
Yeah. Have you not played
the choice series of the Guild? I have not played Fleet before. Yeah.
At all?
Nope.
Wow. Okay. All right. That's cool. That makes you a virgin for Navy then.
Yeah.
We can pop that cherry.
Yep. And then like same thing for air games. I've got whatever it is, Wing Leader, on the lighter side, and then the crunchier side, air games, the stuff that Claystone plays,
right?
Whatever it is, Speed of Heat, or whatever the what's the Clash of Arms? What's the Clash of Arms one?
Yes, with the Russian World War II one.
Whistling Death, is that it's a part of a series, right? I think Whistling Death is one of them.
That's
I think there's others, but yeah, like the super crunchy, calculating vectors and shit, like that's not really my bag.
Yeah, well, I remember one time, Jesse, right?
Yeah.
So Jesse was at one of the cons, and he had all the jets, and they had the little sleds and or blocks, and you could angle
the different angles, right?
And he's going, now look, it's really cool. It's not a lot of physics, just a little.
Yeah.
Right.
Just a smattering, just a smidge of physics.
See, all these guys are drinking beers and stuff, trying to play. They're like, okay, now how do I turn again? And it's like, just okay, now if you take the square root of this, and it was.
Now you gotta play that earlier in the day at AAC Con if anybody's gonna know what the hell's going on.
That shit was out there. Yeah, so that was pretty cool. I think at War Games. So I bought Elusive Victory. I bought that freaking Red Storm.
I've got that too, and actually got a fair way into the rules on Elusive Victory, but haven't pushed any counters around.
Yeah, so read all the rules, got prepped up because I went to Game On in February, and I was going to come and watch and maybe move some units with Ralph, who's the walking rule book for any game he plays, and he was playing with a buddy of his, and so I finished my game, so I came and sat down. This is about 8:00 at night, and so they just started. So the Egyptians or the Syrians or whoever it was were coming in. I forget who's involved in that conflict. I think it's the Egyptians.
It's the Egyptians.
And then the Israelis are intercepting. So about I don't know, 17 turns later, they're within range of actually spotting each other, and they start rolling dice. And so it's just this monster dice fest until you roll a 10 or a 20 or something that you need to roll. And apparently, 2 hours in, just after I left, that was when they got to start firing missiles and stuff. So I missed the exciting part.
Right. It was all altitude changes and scouting and scanning.
SAMs and AA and AA and stuff. And I was like, wow, that's not cool. cool. So that all that stuff is on the for sale bucket. I'm out. So, but Navy stuff, I'm trying to think. So, I mean, have you played any World War II naval stuff? Like CV or
no, like nothing even. I mean, nothing outside of strategic level, really. World War II naval.
Right.
Because I haven't played any of the, any sort of operational type stuff, or even stuff like Midway or something. Just like even old timey naval games. I haven't played.
I've played quite a bit of flat top way back in the day. I enjoyed that. And CV, we played a lot. My buddy and I, when I was in high school, we played the hell out of CV. And my recollections were that both of us cheated all the time with the task forces, and if we weren't cheating, we were screwing it up. Like it was one or the other, because you're supposed to land, and then you've got to do your refueling, and then they're going to be on the ready spot, and there's hundreds of counters, and we're playing once a week, and stuff gets bumped and moved around, and it was always at his house. And he told me years later that when we were playing some other game, that he had he was I found that was a bit of a dick, but he had 2 sets of dice. So we put these screens up, and he had two sets of white dice, and he would roll a set of dice and then lift up the screen and show the other set with the number that he needed.
That's like, why would you go to that level of?
I was like, what a jerk.
Yeah. That's just some diabolical shit right there.
Because I'm just, I just lifted over, and he gave me 2 dice, right? So I had like a gold one and a black one. So no sneaking here with me. Anyway, fun times, right?
Yeah. I was just thinking, I have played a Napoleonic naval game. It's 1805 Sea of Glory, or Seas of Glory.
Oh yeah.
It's a GMT. It's a block game, but it is operational naval Napoleonics, which may be the only operational Napoleonic naval game in existence.
There you
go. I really liked it. It was just because I've never seen a game that did anything like it before, where you're really just paying attention to fleet stuff during the Napoleonic era, and you're as the British, you're kind of managing fleets in all these different places, and as the French, you're essentially just trying to fuck with them constantly.
Because you don't have a chance, really.
Right, because you're not going to go out and just grandly sail and fight the British fleet. So it's almost like this asymmetrical game where the British are trying to administrate and the French are trying to interfere. And it just had some cool stuff with it, like this Atlantic transit track where you would, it took you, what was it? It took a lot longer to get to the Caribbean than it took to get back, or vice versa. It's trade winds related, yeah. So, but then hurricane season could just fuck all your shit up if you did it at the wrong time, if you tried to transit at the wrong time. So it had just this cool stuff going on. And then keeping supply lanes open and sea lanes open and stuff like that. So just lots of cool stuff, but the rules were just a freaking nightmare. Just poor organization of the rule book. Right. So the rules were a struggle to get through it, but like once you got through that struggle, the rules, there was a real gem of an experience there.
Now I'm surprised there's a naval game you haven't played that's in your era, ACW. That's that Rebel Raiders thing.
Yeah. And I guess the only explanation I have is that, like, Confederate privateers, not super interested. Like there's nothing. I don't know. And I mean the was that Fred Schachter, I think, that developed it. He's done some games that have some cool narrative stuff to them. Mm-hmm. And so that was how that was sold. So I'm surprised I didn't pick it up just on that alone. But so it might be something that and I think it can be gotten pretty cheaply. So it's probably something that'll make its way to my collection eventually. But
I've got a buddy who's played and he enjoyed it. They played the hell out of it a bit, and then they realized how they could kind of, not break the game, but hack the game. And
yeah.
So then they were like, okay, that goes in the closet. We're done with that one. What's interesting is, speaking of guys that write hacky rule books. So the chaps that made Nations in Arms, that Napoleonic grand strategic, kind of the replacement for Empire in Arms. I didn't realize that they're also the guys that made Napoleon in Europe, which is more an area-based guy. Have you seen?
Mm-hmm.
Have you seen this?
Yeah, I have it, and I actually dabbled a little bit with Nations in Arms, which it was interesting, but it felt like almost, and maybe I think Napoleon against Europe is probably what they realized that Nations in Arms should have been,
right.
Where Nations in Arms felt like a lot of work, a lot of unnecessary work and a lot of unnecessary map. Like it just felt like I don't have a whole lot of counters here, and yet there's all this space. Like something about it didn't.
Right. It's kind of like the
gel.
Adam Starkweather of Napoleonic games. He's infamous for having way more map than you need.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah, so I'm curious about this. I've actually got the rules out for the second time. I tried once before to get started, and then had to pack it up. So I'm gonna go through like a couple of examples of play, and I think someone's done a couple of videos as well. So Stuka Joe, I think, did a video of this. So I'm gonna go check that out and see what the.
I don't know if it could. I don't know that there's anything that can really replace Empires in Arms, just as a gaming experience. I mean, certainly mechanically you could replicate a lot of what happens there, but the heart of that game is the diplomacy, which is why I'm so terrible at it. Because I've played. I think I've started. We've never finished, but I think 2 or 3 campaigns of Empires in Arms. And I mean, you're playing the people just as much as you're playing the game.
Right.
And I have a hard enough time just playing the game. So
yeah,
it's so I'm just, I would be the guy that would get duped into surrendering, in the middle of an alliance. I'm the guy that surrenders and gives up the farm while my ally gets away scot-free. I would just get hosed all the time on these diplomatic deals.
That's because you're a nice guy, a trusting soul. But so now I've never played Empire in Arms, and I did own it at one point. And then the group of us, we were going to play it, and I said, look, I've got the magnet board in the game room. We'll set it up. We'll leave it. It can take 10 years. Doesn't matter. And we'll just get after it. And of course, we talked about it. I set it up. Never happened, right? Number one. Number two, then I start reading about all these game plays, and then guys who love the game go, yeah, it's really cool, but then it all comes down to the final battle, and it's a D6, and you need to roll a 6. Wait, what? You play for how many hours or days or weeks with half a dozen of you, and you did what? And maybe that's how it works. I don't know. Maybe it's
well, I don't know. I mean, you can. The problem is, first of all, it's a 7-player game, and you need all 7 players.
Right.
With people with families and kids and jobs, and it's like impossible to get that group of people together regularly enough. And we did it we played maybe a year and a half. We got through several years of the 1805 campaign. But if the player who's playing France doesn't know what they're doing, you don't have a game. And so like it all hinges on how good your French player is. Right. And so fortunately we've got guys in our group that are real experienced with it. And so I'm like, I don't want to play France. You could never you can't pay me to play France in this game. Right. I want to play Spain. I want to play Turkey. I want to play some country that doesn't have to make any hard decisions.
Right.
And can just sit on the couch and, talk with people and drink while,
right.
The real game is the real battles and diplomacy are going on.
Right.
So it's you have to have the right group, and you have to have a competent French player. Otherwise, the whole thing just collapses.
Right. Interesting. That's pretty interesting. Well, Panikowski Mike here is asking if we've played Blue Water Navy, and I have not. And I believe that's a riff and a revision of Breaking the Chains, which I did not like. But I've read the rules, I think, for Blue Water Navy. A buddy of mine has it, and it looks pretty interesting. It's a modern day.
I know a couple guys in the guild played it. I think Sammer played it, and somebody else.
Did Salmon like it?
I think so. Yeah, the what I heard was pretty positive feedback on it.
Yeah, I need to. My buddy's got it. I need to. We were planning on playing, but now with all this crap going on, there's no face to face. He's an older guy, so he doesn't want to see anybody. So that was interesting. Then of course, Clay's asking about Jaws of Victory, and Clay, if you're still here, I like the game. I think I probably played my opening wrong, and I think the mechanics of the game are interesting. For you, it's not DOS, right? So it's not the level of crunch you're probably looking for, but it is very, also Jack Rady would say it's not detailed enough, but it's a pretty detailed look at that area in the Ukraine. It's got a good feel. I think the gameplay, that Victory in the West system with a little more meat in it. I'm trying to think about the combat system, whether it was you had to know what you were doing in that game. So there's a level of detail in there. You also had to know mechanically how you were going to go about specific things. You couldn't just turn up and go, oh, I'm going to attack these 3 hexes and expect the best. And as a defender, you had to know what you were doing too. So you got to make sure that you had the right number of steps in a stack and make sure you had the right combination of units and things like that. So as an East Front around the Dnieper River, 43, I think it is, it's pretty interesting. So I just don't know if it's technical enough for you, Clay, because I know you like it. You probably should be looking for Jack Rady's new game from People's Wargames. That is probably going to be your cup of tea, I think, because it's a big game on basically the same battle at a more detailed level, and it's more mechanically complex as well, I think. So that's just 2 cents or 2 minutes as the case may be. All right, let's see. Anyone else?
I think Jaws of Victory is another game that's like the new hotness in the guild too. So. Oh
really? People playing? Yeah.
Yep. It's gotten good reviews, good components, good rules.
Yep. Yep. It's really rules are really good. Components are awesome. It plays well, but if you don't get that first turn right, you may as well reset and get started, restart as the Soviets. And there's some funky stuff with supply as well. So I found it really, really hard. And my buddy who I play with here in Austin, we were planning on getting together to play it opposed. He's played, and he had we were texting pictures to each other of our turns, and we were 1 or 2 turns apart. And he was having almost the same level of difficulty I was as the Soviets on the eastern side of the board, trying to break through. I forget whether it's Ukraine front 1 or 2, but it's very, very challenging. So there's some more finesse. I think you got to play it multiple times to work it out. Anyway.
And that's anything that requires multiple plays just to start to get it. Like it's a tough.
Yes, yeah, especially when it's 2 maps and 1,000 counters, right? It's like, come on,
can I devote the next 6 to 8 months of my life?
Yeah.
There's a lot of other games on these shelves, right?
Yeah, Don Johnson, proud monster, 3 maps, couple of 1,000 counters. You got to play it 10 times to work it out. Otherwise, you're not going to find all the Easter eggs. So there's your Easter egg. Come on, man. At least give me a clue. I didn't know that attacking an empty hex was a thing. I'm just saying. What I did last night that was fun. I set up the old sniper, the TSR version of it,
And I just did a live stream, and like 5 or 6 or 7 people turned up, and I managed to cajole or embarrass 3 people into actually picking a counter, and that was their counter. And then I would ask them what they wanted to do with the unit. And so I had my map. I had my map with everything on it here, and then the camera on their map with just their guys. And then I would expose units in. They were on patrol, and then I ambushed them. Right,
Mm-hmm.
had it all kind of pre-written, so I wasn't cheating too bad as far as that. So it was doing. I did a Australians versus the VC ambush in that. So we got part of the way through it. So I'm gonna spin that up tomorrow night again as well, just for fun. It's kind of something different to do.
Cool.
We may as well,
So
right?
It was like live double blind.
Yeah, it was live double blind, but just I played one side and the referee.
Yeah.
So, and I'm learning the game as we go, right? I'd read the rules 2 hours before, and we're working it out. It was pretty fun. So, here's a good question. You play minis? Well, you did, right? You played.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, that's kind of where I got my start wargaming. Was playing minis, and it was I'm all Johnny Reb. I've played some Franco-Prussian War. I forget what rules system that was. I want to say it was the 1870 rules, but that's not what it was. It was I don't remember. I mean, I only played it. Well, it wasn't my, they weren't my minis, and that's the way I always did my mini playing. Was I just, mooch off somebody else's armies or whatever that did all the work. So that's why I don't play it now, just because the work involved in it mainly.
Yeah. I'm out of alcohol. I'll be back. Entertain people, sing a song or dance.
Any other questions? Yeah, like I said about Michael, I've the Blue Water Navy. I have heard good things, and yeah, great support. I'm sure. Always nice when you've got a designer willing to engage.
Exactly, right. You know who's great at that is the dude Mike Denson from Last 100 Yards, that tactical game. He is awesome. He drove to, I wrote some articles, like narrative things, while I was playing this game. And so I met him in Seattle, and then he lives east of town. So he came to town and spent like 4 hours over here, and we played because I wanted to learn how to play with tanks, right? And so we had a tank battle with this game, and that was kind of fun. He's super nice, older gentleman, really sweet. He's a nice guy, so I'm very supportive of this game too. I was going to ask, so Michael, Breaking the Chains is I don't know if you like it or not, Michael. So if you like it, that's awesome. I wasn't a huge fan. I'll say that. I used to call it breaking the wrist, but that's just a thing. I had a question for you. What was I going to ask you? You were talking about minis. Oh, minis. So I'm kind of like you. If someone has an army, let's play, right? But I don't want to do all that. Like it's a whole nother hobby there, right?
Yeah.
Finding the armies, building them, getting the lists, painting, cluing.
And it's a rabbit hole I could go down. I've always been fascinated by uniforms and all that kind of stuff. So I could definitely see myself, falling down that hole. But it's like, so much work. And I played an ancient system too called Warrior.
I haven't heard of that.
Dr. Bruce tried to get me into that. So and there was guys that are at the club who had, some armies ready to go. So we just borrowed some of those. And I think we spent an evening moving our two sides towards each other. And then, by the time the evening was over, we had just gotten our armies almost to the point where they could engage. So I was like, this might be a little more detailed.
Start closer. Start closer together, right?
Yeah.
That's curious. I find so I'm fascinated by, you know, the certain periods, the weaponry or the technology or the uniforms, as the case may be. I'm going to need some water. And I find when I'm playing Napoleonic games, when I'm trying to write something up on the blog, I start looking up, okay, well, what did this unit have? What was what weapons did they have? What were the uniforms like? What colors were the piping? And so I totally get into all of that. But looking it up and then writing about it is one thing. Painting, you know, holding the brush and thousands of guys. I'm not sure that I'm down for that. I would love to buy or acquire finished armies in a couple of different eras, but
because like for Civil War, it was my buddy in high school and we focused on painting Union troops, mainly because everybody always wanted to play the Confederates, and so they didn't have a lot of Union players that had big Union armies. So we painted these Union armies, which was pretty good. But, you know, like I'd like to get the Zouaves. I'd like to make sure they have the right hats, you know, and like, yeah, you could just kill yourself trying to get the minutia. Like, oh, what did this regiment, what did, you know, the 17th New York actually have, you know, in terms of uniforms, and what types of guns did they have? Like, yeah, you could just totally get lost.
Right. Well, there's a cool system that, and I think Jesse ran a game at a con once, but it was a Flight of the Eagle or the Lifting Eagles or whatever it is from Pratt's and Editions. That's that abstract.
The Vol Delisle or whatever the French pronunciation is. Yeah.
There's something was the eagle.
Yeah.
That thing. And it's got a set of miniatures rules in it, but it's, you know, the guy's like, take these cards that he provides you that you can cut up, and you can move the cards around to represent the formations. Now, it's not the same effect, right? And it's not, and you use
in theory, you could do that with any miniatures game, right?
right. You could do it with
cardboard chits. Oh, that's what people ended up doing.
Yeah, so why wouldn't I just buy a Hexen Cap version or something like that? So anyway, Custer asked a good question about whether rule books are the best way to learn, or whether companies should. Interestingly, he said just do videos on YouTube. The answer to that is no.
Yeah, that wouldn't be sustainable. But I mean, people learn different ways, and so you know, and some rule books are made better than others. I can learn through a rule book, and in some ways I prefer to learn through a rule book, just because I can always have that there as a reference. It's tough to queue up a video like, oh, where do I need to, what was the section on withdrawal fire? And you know, where was that in the video? Like trying to queue your videos up is to every case that could be in a rule book would be tough. So I generally prefer rules. But you know, I use videos a lot for my like Ameritrash and Euro games.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think videos are much better for those. Something that's got 8 pages of rules, you could do a video for that. So, and they're pretty good. But for war games, I don't think it would ever be something that could be.
I think the guys that try and do tutorials, I think that's cool. You know, show me some examples of play and give me a little bit of a run through, give me a feel for it, so I can go. I can compare what I'm learning by reading to, and I can look at that video and go, oh, okay, well, it looks like I played it mostly right.
And the videos are good too to queue up as something to run while you're setting something up,
right? Or
you're clipping the counters or whatever. Like it's when you're having to do something else, but you can have a video running that can kind of start to implant stuff in your brain, you know, even if you're not 100% paying attention to it. So I mean, so they're good. They are good tools for helping a system gel, especially if you can see tutorials or whatever. But for me, it's still going to be the rule book. It's always the primary source for me.
Yeah, it's funny. People say that they like these playthroughs in the back of the rule books and stuff like that, and I'll occasionally look at them if I get stuck. But I'm not a big fan of looking at all of those and going through all of those at all. I much rather just read the rules. You know, you print them out, make a summary, or highlight stuff and mark things up. And I love it when guys go and do their own thing and like someone did for Napoleon against Europe. And it may have actually been the company that did this, but there's a detailed sequence of play, and the rule references aren't there. I can write the rule references in here. That was one thing. What was I playing the other day that was so easy? Just made learning the game so. Battle for Normandy. I was playing Battle for Normandy, and sequence of play. Every step in it had a rules reference. So, yeah, I can skim the rules. Right?
Was that Ben Hall? Did Ben Hall do?
No, that's Danny Holt.
Danny Holt. Okay.
Yeah.
Because I was just thinking of Musket and Pike as like a great example of always having a case anytime, in your sequence of play or on your charts. Like all your charts have case references on them too.
Yeah, that bugs me when the case references are not on the charts. That pisses me off.
And so that's good. And having being able to refer back to the case numbers is key. Like it has to be all over the game. I love it when it's all interwoven, indexed, interwoven case numbers. That's the ideal.
I think rule books have got a lot better. I think the compare it, say, like I pulled out that old Red Star, White Star. It's an old SBI title. It's 12 pages of rules. The rules are on this sort of funky layout. So it's a fold out horizontal doohickey. So I took screen grabs of all the rules. I scanned them, took a screen grabs, and then cut and paste or used an OCR and put the rules into a foolscap format so I can print it out properly and read it and mark it up. Kind of a painful exercise, but it's how I learned to play, by writing on the rules, and I didn't want to. This thing's already hacked up enough, so I didn't want to do that. And plus, it's inconvenient because you got to flip this whole fold-out sheet that's like 3 feet long, with pages of rules on each panel. But going through that exercise is a great way to learn the rules, and none of it had cases, right? It had like primary cases, and there's no index. It compared to what we have.
Go back and hunt through a paragraph, and maybe you can find something.
I mean, we're so lucky these days. But I think the rules are a lot better, and folks, good designers know they need to have. If it's more than 10 pages, they've got to have an index.
I will say, for the examples of play, examples of play to me are useless if they just show you all the basic shit you just read about in the rules. If you're going to put an example of play in at the end, put some weird edge case shit in there.
Right.
So, because that's where I have the questions at, right? Well, what about this? It's not really addressed here. It's not really addressed here. Where do I find the answer to this? Put that weird shit in your example of play. The kind of stuff that might happen rarely, or that could be a not uncommon confluence of events in your game, and throw that into your example of play, so that. And I want to say there's a game that did that. Maybe it was Twilight in the East, that had a really great sort of example of play that kind of walked you through an entire turn of one of the scenarios, and had like some weird stuff happen. Not just basic, you move and fight here. There was weird, this guy, he can, there was weird retreat scenarios and weird movement stuff, and a exceptional supply case. Like, he puts real stuff in there that you're going to run into, and not just bare bones. Here's what happens when two guys shoot at each other, figure the rest out.
Right. Right. Yeah. Well, I feel like the card-driven games tend to have that challenge, because there's so many different things that can happen with one event being played after another, or certain interactions between cards being played that can cause problems. That they tend to get hairy, and then you look at the rule book, and it's like, Bill plays for 3 ops, and he ignores the fact that some
right. Let's pick for this example, let's pick 2 cards that are perfectly suited for each other.
Yeah. So that's always a goof. I can tell you my answer is no on that.
Yeah. Now I long ago made peace with the fact that I am a consumer.
Yeah.
A consumer only. I'm not really interested in design.
Yeah, I might make a scenario every now and then, like I'll do stuff, but I won't. I'll never design a game. The last thing I want to do is spend the next 10 years of my life supporting it for that matter. So
That's the other thing. I mean, you design a game, and that's the game you're going to play for the next 10 years.
yeah. And also, just I would get frustrated with stupid questions, so I wouldn't be a very good supporter. It's like, yeah, what the rules do. That's all fucking right. Work it out. It's not hard. So no, sorry. I won't be designing any games. Shit. Well, what's up next week? Are you working from home?
Yeah. My wife and I both are still fortunate enough to both still be employed, and both able to work from home. So just another week of that, and VPN, Microsoft Teams, video conferences.
Are you finding you're getting more game time in?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people probably are like, "Hey, I don't have a 2-hour commute each way anymore," and so probably have a lot more free time. My commute was only ever 6 or 7 minutes as it was, so I'm not getting a lot of time back there. But I'm finding that I do have more focus, which is interesting, because I guess just not having to think about going into work and doing all this other shit, you can just kind of sit and focus more, which has been nice.
Yeah.
Making the best of a bad situation.
What are you putting up to play? Anything new next week?
I'm kind of looking. I'm reading a biography of Rudyard Kipling right now, about his relationship with the Empire, the British Empire, and so it's so I've set out this guy.
Oh yeah, shoot!
You've ever played this before?
Yeah, I own it.
And I've dabbled with it before, but anytime I start reading about late Victorian era British Empire, it just makes me think of that.
Yeah.
It's sort of a fun game it's kind of like a sandbox almost to mess around in that era.
Mm-hmm.
At least if you're playing solo, just to try some weird shit with the different powers of the era, see what happens.
I heard that we're trying to do something new with that. We're trying to reboot it.
Yeah, Decision Games is working on a reprint of it. Whatever Decision does to games, they're working on it.
Remagicking.
Yeah.
Let's take a perfectly awesome game and completely foobar it. Yeah. I'm kind of at a impasse next week. I've got to, once I pack up this sniper thing, I need to find something to get going on. I've got Storms of Steel set up, and I got all spun up around the axle on that game, so I've got to reset and get started up right. I wasn't playing it correctly. And it's
Storm of Steel, is that the World War I game, or
no? It's the Conflict of Heroes.
Oh, okay.
Academy. So they sent me, a demo copy, and so I'm obligated. I gotta play it, and then now it's sticking in my craws. I gotta play it. So it's sitting on my table, and I hurt my back a few months ago when I first got the game, and then Uwe sent me an email. He's like, "Hey, how's the game going?" I'm like, "Oh, I hurt my back. I haven't been able to play anything.
It's buried under a pile somewhere."
So I got to get on that. But,
I think it's a pretty well liked series, though. So at least it's not going to be some miserable experience to trudge your way through.
Yeah, it is a little different though. Like coming at it from Band of Brothers, Lock and Load, OST, Last 100 Yards. It's different. So it's taken a little bit of headspace up with me. I'm having some challenges, so I got to get over that. Grind through it, work it out. So, yeah, I'm looking for something different and meaty that I can wrap my head around. So,
A new system or something comfortable and familiar?
no, I think something new. I've got comfy stuff going on Vassal with folks right now. So I've got a BCS game going, which is not really comfy, but I got a BCS going with a buddy. I've got 2 OCS games going. I got one with Tony. And playing with Tony is always fun because he's just a goofball. And we do it live, not streaming, but just live together. So we don't get together very often, but we get 2 or 3 turns done when we play. So it's moving pretty quick. We're playing DAC 2.
Yeah. Still my dream, just because I love North Africa so much.
Yeah, it's a great game. And then I was playing. I got 2 turns done on live stream with Oddwolf with Gary, and I'm doing Tunisia 2 with him, and we made some mistakes together on the rules, and I made some mistakes, and then we realized at the end of turn 2 that basically I had screwed myself, and so that we're going to reset everything and work it out. So I got comfy stuff, so I'm looking for something different, and so that's why I pulled out the Napoleon in Europe. I thought I might try something like that. We'll see. So, but anyway, we've probably bored people long enough. What do you think? Hour and 10 minutes. So you've got over your daiquiris? Yeah,
I'm good. I'm rehydrated. I have to have a midnight snack now.
Oh, nice. Yeah, that's great for your digestion.
And I know Dave and Ralph and CRAC are going to fire up Federation and Empire in about 15 minutes. So.
Are they really?
Yeah, there's that too.
Ooh, I might have to get in there.
I might sit in since I'm up this late. I'm usually not, like by 12:30. I'm usually like, like I'd love to join in their game because usually they play every Friday, and I'd love to join in, but I can rarely make it that far. And if I get on there, I'm gonna have to sit there for at least an hour, just before bullshitting. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. There's a lot of talking. Yeah. I'm more let's play. Right. We can talk while we play, but let's play. Let's roll dice. So, so one last question here from Custer. Custer's asking good questions. Do you like all the new solitaire games? I haven't played very many, but Phantom Leader would be the newest one I've played, and I did.
I'm trying to think of the last actually designed for solitaire game that I played. Peloponnesian War. I guess I've cranked through a couple turns of that, of Mark Herman's new GMT version of his old Victor Games title, which is still a great design. And Mark Herman, he's kind of gotten big into making everything he does solitaire friendly.
Yeah.
And so it's good to see designers kind of exploring that space.
Mm-hmm.
So because that can bring some innovation. So it's definitely, I think it's a good time for solitaire. And I think aren't all of the decision, the DG decision at whatever Peleliu decision at not decision D-Day, like all the D-Day titles from Decision Games, aren't all those solitaire titles?
Yeah,
those are pretty popular.
Yeah, I like some of Hollenspiel's games. So and Marcus Aurelius, and there's another one that's on the tip of my tongue. Can't remember. Charlemagne.
Mm-hmm.
I
actually did a review of Charlemagne. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I really like that game. Freaking hard. I never won. I only played a couple of times, but I never won. But anyway. All right, man. I'll tell you what. I'm going to let you roll. Maybe I'll see you on Federation.
Go crash Federation and Empire.
Yeah, what's going down with Ralph and Co. But it was good chatting with you.
Yeah, you too.
Yeah, and thanks guys for tuning in. All the best.
Yep. Thanks everybody.